Good morning, students. Yesterday we had just started covering the Roulette Satyagraha. That is, the Roulette Act had been passed by the British in 1919, which was considered to be a very oppressive act, and it was a very oppressive act, and it gave enormous powers to the civil administration in India, whereby two major things had happened, or rather, the two major powers were given to the civilian administration or the police. The first one, of course, was that anyone could be arrested, any political activist could be arrested and put behind bars for 2 years without any trial. Now, that is a very oppressive thing to do because normally, if someone needs to be sent inside a prison, then he has to be tried in the courts of law. Now, this is something, and this act actually waived that precondition. And the second thing that was very important about this act was that the police could now actually search anything without the magisterial permission. It did not need a warrant. What exactly is a warrant? Warrant is essentially a magisterial permission. But now police could search anyone's home, any house, anything virtually without any permission from anyone. So this was considered to be something as a direct attack on the civil rights of the people, and the whole nation actually rose against this act. And this is what Gandhiji started his when he had started the satyagraha. So Rolit Satyagraha had been a widespread movement. Now that's what Gandhiji did. But then coming today, we start with one way of Gandhiji felt that yes, Rolit Satyagraha could have been more successful. He felt it could have been much more had Muslims also participated in it. That is, the Muslims of India had also joined hand in hand with the Hindus, and then it would have been a far more successful agitation. Now, not just because of this Rolit Satyagraha and the outcome of it, but any freedom movement which had to be launched in India and which had to be taken forward in India would have had to encompass all the sections of the society. It could not be just about a particular section which happened to be the majority section of the population, right? You had to win the confidence of everyone. Otherwise, it things never quite become the mass movement. Okay. Now, so one way the Gandhi understood that. So one way of doing this, he felt, was to take up the Khilafat issue. The First World War had ended with the defeat of Ottoman Turkey. And there were rumors that a harsh peace treaty was going to be imposed on the Ottoman Emperor, the spiritual head of the Islamic world, the Khalifa. Students, I just wish that I had a board to really explain it to you. This is actually something which needs explanation on the board, but I'll just try to make it simple, because this is also very important to understand what exactly is a Khalifa. Okay, and what, because if we have to study about the Khilafat movement, we would also have to understand who or what the institution of Khalifa is. Okay, now, like in the Christian world, like in the Catholic Christian world, which is headed by the Pope, who has a seat in Rome, in similar fashion, Khalifa, the Khalifas had been heading the Islamic world. That is, the Islamic world was headed by a Khalifa. That is, he was considered to be the leader of all the Muslims on the planet. And that is, this institution came up after the death of Prophet Muhammad. That is around 622 AD, after death of Christ, that is. And the first, because once Prophet Muhammad was gone, someone had to be appointed as the leader of all the Muslims. So the gentleman who was chosen for this assignment was Abu Bakr. Now, Abu Bakr definitely is not there. All this is not there in this chapter, and neither in this paragraph. But just to make things a bit simpler for you, so that you can connect. So the first one was Abu Bakr, and after his death, then of course we had other gentlemen with the name of Umar, and then Usman, and then Ali. So there was a whole line of caliphs who replaced the older caliphs once they were gone. So basically ensuring that leadership succession, that is always continue, that someone was leader of the Muslims. Okay. Now, um, that was till the First World War, because at that point in time, the leader of the Muslims, that is the Khalifa, was considered to be the Ottoman Emperor. Ottoman is, the Turkish Empire was named as the Ottoman Empire, and the Turkish ruler was considered to be the ruler of the Islamic world. But uh, uh, Turkey had been, students, you'll also have to now understand the First World War. Now, the First World War was fought in Europe, and as we had seen right in the beginning of it, that different European powers were fighting for it. But to keep it short, you have to understand that Turkey was, or the Ottomans were on the losing side. They lost the First World War. That is their side. They were, they were considered to be from the. Their group was known as the group of Central Powers, and the Central Powers lost the First World War. So naturally, the victors, that is the people who won the First World War, that they were known as the Allied powers, and those countries were France and England and Russia and Japan and Italy and United States. These were the main powers. So the Muslims around the world now feared that because Turkey and the Ottoman Empire had lost the First World War, naturally the institution of the King of Ottoman Empire would be dissolved, and naturally once the king was gone, the whole institution of Khalifa would be gone as well. And that is what exactly happened in 1924. The whole institution of Khalifa was gone. And Mahatma Gandhi, but that was later, but that happened in 1924. But because the Ottomans lost the First World War, it was now everyone understood that it was just now be a matter of time when the institution of Khalifa would end. And because the British were the victorious powers, the same British who were ruling India as well. So naturally, Gandhiji wanted to, play on the concerns of the Muslims of India as well, and he thought that it was a great opportunity to unite the Hindus as well as Muslims, because any mass agitation or any mass movement in India would not work without taking everyone on board. Okay, now that is what it is. To defend Khalifa's temporal powers. Temporal powers means students essentially the earthly powers, the administrative powers, because this is a religious office. So people in religious office naturally are considered to be having two kinds of powers. One happens to be the normal administrative powers, and the other one happens to be the spiritual powers. Okay, now, so to defend the Khalifa's temporal powers. Now, no one can take the spiritual power away from you, right? So, but the administrative power can always be taken from you. So, and this is what the Muslims wanted to prevent. A Khilafat committee was formed in Bombay in March 1919. A young generation of Muslim leaders like the brothers Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali began discussing with Mahatma Gandhi about the possibility of a united mass action on the issue. Gandhiji saw this as an opportunity to bring Muslims together under an umbrella of a unified national movement. At the Calcutta session of the Congress in September 1920, he convinced other leaders, that is, other Congress leaders, of the need to start a non cooperation movement in support of Khilafat as well as for Swaraj. So Gandhiji, now wanted a movement, a nationwide movement to be launched, which did not just talk about the independence and Swaraj and the self rule of India, but also talked about and also wanted to fight about the preservation of the institution of Khalifa, so that the Muslims of India also felt that yes, their interests are being taken care of, and Gandhiji felt that yes, if the Hindus also kind of are part of a movement which raises these concerns, then definitely there would be a great amount of confidence building that would happen between the Muslims and the Hindus. So that's what the intention of Mahatma Gandhi was. Now, why non cooperation? Students, the first paragraph here is, but students, before I go into the first paragraph, always remember one very important thing. These sessions of Congress, because at the Calcutta session of Congress in September 1920, now these sessions, these Congress sessions, and these years before the launching of mass agitations, or before taking the major political decisions, these are like very, very important dates in history, and very, very important sessions of history. They not just in terms of history, that is in history, but also for your examinations, because many questions are always asked about what session in Kanpur led to this, and then in 1939, which this Congress session was held where, or rather, or for that matter, which session decided the partition of India. And these are very, very important things. So please be very careful with them. Now, why non-cooperation? In his famous book Hind Swaraj in 1909, that means clearly when Mahatma Gandhi was in South Africa, Mahatma Gandhi declared that British rule was established in India with the cooperation of Indians, and had survived only because of this cooperation. If Indians refused to cooperate, British rule in India would collapse within a year and Swaraj would come. Students, naturally, though Mahatma Gandhi was in South Africa, living there, but being an Indian, naturally his heart would always and mind would always be, also be worried about India and the events in India. And that's what he felt, even when, though this was written in 1909, and as we have already seen, Mahatma Gandhi came to India in 1915. So even then, he understood that British were able to rule in India for such a long period of time because they had grabbed the power in India in 1757. So they had been ruling here for a very long period in time. Just a few thousand Muslims, British, who came to India. Uh, First as traders, then as part of an organized East India Company, and ultimately became the real masters of not just India but the complete Indian subcontinent. And Mahatma Gandhi very rightly felt that it was impossible that a few thousand British would be able to rule a massive geography like India, a country or a geography which had crores and crores of people living in it, just being ruled by a few thousand. So it was impossible without the cooperation of Indians themselves. And this is what Mahatma Gandhi had raised in his famous book Hindu Swaraj, that if we Indians stop cooperating with British in their affairs to rule this country, if we just start ignoring their interests, if we refuse to cooperate with them, it would just be a matter of time when the British, in spite of the because in spite of all the leadership, the British leadership, the whole structure, the whole system would collapse, and they would find it impossible to govern such a huge geography like ours. Okay, we shall continue tomorrow.